Hello, this is Derick again, reading probably 3 poems from my new collection, Apocalyptics, which will be out in the end of April from Unlikely Books. As you can see, there's a couple of physical copies already in existence, but they're just proofs. So I'm going to read 3 poems from it and then 2 poems from not yet published collections. The first poem for this evening will be Interrogative. Interrogative. Do you dream of vultures picking at the roadside deer, stripping it down to the framing and interlace like a negligee in autumn? Do you take the bullet train to the edge of the world, watch oceans fall into the abyss of stars, despite the impossible cosmology? Do you know the continental drift, pulling the plates apart from their marriage, a slow spat between ashen, rocky lovers until they crash into a new partner? Do you see the trains coming in from Russia to Paris, across the Asian tundra? Do you know where we wait for each other? Do you know my ex-wife? Do you know the ache of scavenging? Do you see the caribou carcass in the distance buzzing alone? Do you know the tracks we called Sweetie and Darling do not end? Do you know they keep going? Do you want to save me from this wandering? Do you want to keep me like a locket, close to your heart, but covered in metal? Do you care that this is not about you? Do you see the sky? Do you know it's empty? Do you care? Do you? Poem 2, Doubting. There's a slip to slip in, but one wonders if breakbeats break faster than glass. There are many famous poets younger than me. The slipping moves up the ladder, repeated images in a codex, rotted incisors, blood and alcohol, dusted cow bones, clouds and aperture. Why comments lining the halls? Beauty was, and all I got was 3 ribbons made of lousy t-shirt. Once I tried to write about you, a you, the you, 1,000 mock trials filled with the underwritten and vague ghosts dredge up from the deep muck of dead girlfriends, friends in wayward cabbage patches in the backyards sometime in the mid-1980s. When I met Beauty once, I broke the syntax for it. Some people say things like make love as cold for sex, but I say sex and mean coldness. Something one does not long to touch, something one wants to watch live past yourself. All that silly etc., all that miasma of miserable parties lingering just a little longer than one should. The bar is closing. We came this far to have nothing to say. We came, at least. There are no puns in punishment, and nothing more masochistic than a poet doubting. Might as well hog-tie him with words, whip her with some dangling claws. There aways too much for you for one play session. There's always more brown teeth, blood and whiskey, malted iron on the tongue. We are running out of words. And we're going to end off with Erosion 3. Sitting in the park, I see black birds pick apart a flattened sparrow. Tufts of feathers tower out of the beginnings of visible bone. I can't help but remember. This narrative intrusion does not go unnoticed. Memory likes verse, and birds acting oracle to other dead birds. The move is obvious because memory fades like a firefly larva, growing fat on the fruit before the crab apple falls to the ground. I am forgetting the point, but the birds continue eating. I think this poem is for a woman who lives far away. Too far to be a one-night stand. Wayward flesh missed out mostly in letters. I read somewhere that poetry is a remnant of courtship rites. We learn to speak first to lie, then to forget, but we learned to rhyme, to remember, and share a bed with another woman or man of the tribe. This is what they say, but I don't know. The glutted crews call to me. They don't want to share, just want me to know. They didn't kill the sparrow, but ate it anyway. There are mountains in the distance of the park, sitting like gossip in the Mexican desert just beyond the city. The peaks remind me of driving through Colorado. The mountains are more dried from the sun here and stare more blankly in their blandness. There is so much that runs together like mixed soil, sand, silt, and rot. To the woman, I hope she is sitting somewhere thinking about birds, thinking about past lovers, and the awkwardness of words. May the distance erode like desert abrading the mountains. And this next poem is from a chapbook that I haven't released yet, that was written when my wife was diagnosed with cancer. It's called Metastasis. The poem itself is called How to Keep Your Hungry Ghosts Fed. How to keep your hungry ghosts fed. Setting fire to the paper dim sum, watching the ashes of Josh money, floral incense mixed with facsimile of cell phones, glass houses, yachts full of dead communists. For all the dead ones loved and the dead without family, imagine going to the stream and never taking water for thousands of years. What jokes the ghost would have if their mouths were not caked with dust and puckered far beyond the possibility of syllables making sense. A man asks his future descendants to burn a pint of beer, an entire bank, and most things that make him hungry, dead, and incorporeal in the first place. What we turn to ash is often what we believe. The ghosts are hungry. The fire is all there is, anyway. What more can you ask for? What is a little more burning? And from that same collection, Metastasis. Sometimes I say too much. This violence. She sleeps on the cot in the other room. Heavy branches on the family tree, molded fruit of semaphore dangling, her cells dividing. Whispered love is an admission of defeat, the way a mother pulls a son whose knee is skinned and dermis lays open to the world. I admit, sometimes I say too much. Now there is a divide, a cleft, an aperture, the twisted tissue moving like clouds nodding when lightning strikes, a husk of a beetle cleaving to ginkgo bark. The winter blows dry on my face as I hang both our clothes on the sun-parched porch. Cicadas come in the spring, misled boys preparing for porn relationships in Wikipedia, don't know of the graveyard of unpublished poems, the wiping carefully around incision wounds, holding a woman trembling at her bodily insurrection, sweat and exhaustion reddening to the eyes. I know I say too much, poet to do. I like to go home, but heavy branches fall, mitochondria break. Good night. That was 3 poems from my collection, Apocalyptics, and 2 poems from a yet unpublished collection called Metastasis. Have a good evening.